How is Facebook's latest privacy stuff-up potentially putting users in danger?
And what can we expect from Samsung's Galaxy Note 9 and Apple's next iPhone?
Vertical Hold, Behind the Tech News, is proudly brought to you by Belkin.
Welcome to Vertical Hold Behind the Tech News, where we talk to Australia's leading technology journalist to get the stories behind the news of the week. I'm Adam Turner, and I'm joined as usual by the hardest working man in podcasting, Alex Kidman, to channel surf through the headlines in search of the big picture. This week we're joined by a brand new guest in the Vertical Hold studio, Gizmodo Australia Deputy Editor, Tegan Jones. Tegan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, gentlemen.
This week we're diving into the murky world of Facebook's latest privacy disasters, plus we'll take a look at the Galaxy Note 9 and Apple iPhone rumours, but first, over to the news desk. Alex, what's happening in tech?
Owners of Samsung phones may have been getting a little more chatty than they had planned on, with numerous reports from the US of Samsung phones spontaneously texting private photos to random entries in their contacts book. Samsung has confirmed that it's looking into the issue, which seems to revolve around the interplay between Samsung's messaging app and the rollout of rich communication services on US carrier T-Mobile.
A Netflix price hike might be on the cards, with rumours of a new ultra pricing tier which would likely cost more than $25 a month in Australia. In return, this Ultra plan lets 4 users watch Ultra HD streams simultaneously, which might sound familiar because you get that right now under the Premium plan for $17.99 a month in Australia. Under these changes, the Premium plan would drop back to only 2 simultaneous Ultra HD streams, and those 2 watchers would lose access to HDR. Now, Netflix has confirmed that it's testing this new pricing tier on some users, so we'll have to wait and see if it goes ahead.
Concerned about your privacy in the digital surveillance era? It turns out all you might need to fool facial recognition cameras is a dab or 2 of face paint. Research around fans, known as juggalos, of horrorcore group The Insane Clown Posse, suggests that the black face paint used under the chin of most juggalo makeup causes cameras to misidentify where their chins are. It's only viable on cameras that use flat images, however, so more advanced depth sensing cameras, such as those used by Apple on its Face ID cameras, won't actually be fooled.
Amazon is determined to win over Australian online shoppers, declaring July 16 and 17 Prime Day. Well, I guess that's Prime and a half day, considering that it starts at lunchtime on a Thursday and runs for 36 hours. Australian Prime subscribers will get discounts on Alexa-enabled devices, along with a range of other gear that's available via the Australian store. Meanwhile, Aussies haven't been blocked from foreign Amazon stores like the US and UK. You can still window shop, but the blockade over GST kicks in at the checkout if you specify an Australian delivery address.
Okay, so Adam, I desperately want to talk about how clown makeup can be used to fool technology, but I'm aware that some of our listeners might have coulrophobia, so we'd probably better talk about that Netflix price hike instead.
Can't sleep, clown's gonna eat me. Can't sleep, clown's gonna eat me.
Do you think they're really likely to punch the prices up in a competitive market?
I can see them maybe trying to push the prices up. What seems to me harder to believe is that they would downgrade some of the existing plans and do things like take HDR away. That's just vindictive. That's if they're trying to annoy users, that's really the way to go. I'd be surprised if they went that far, but this is what it's all about. Netflix come up with these plans and they just test them with a handful of users around the world and see who takes the bait and who doesn't. So hopefully enough people will tell them to stick it that they won't do it. Tegan, are you a Netflix subscriber? What kind of plan do you have and what would it take to get more money out of you?
Yeah, so I am. I'm a very good daughter in that I have the highest possible plan in Australia at the moment, so my parents can also enjoy my subscription. So this is an interesting announcement for me in my life.
Yeah, I think that could be part of it. They're trying to crack down on people because I'm a good son and a good son-in-law. And some people say that they might be trying to crack down on that, but there's also an argument that, and this has been said for years with things like Foxtel sharing accounts and HBO in the US, that some of those people then go on to become subscribers. So it's kind of like getting a taste of it. So it's not necessarily bad for them in the long run. What do you think, Alex? How many family members are mooching off your Netflix account, and what would it take to get more money out of you?
Well, look, if anyone from Netflix is listening, I'm the good customer. I'm not actually sharing it outside my house at all. Although we do often push the device limit in terms of offline programming and things like that. So that would be a big thing for me. I haven't actually bothered to punch up to the 4K plan because only up until recently did I permanently have a 4K TV in the house, and it's not really worth it until you've got that. The HDR removal is an odd one to me because they don't have a huge ton of HDR content on there. It feels like, they're taking something away. They're trying to give you an incentive to push forward. I wonder how many people that's going to be a huge incentive for. We all know how much better HDR could look, but it's not as though, regular 4K looks like digitized garbage, though.
Yeah, true, but they do push things like HDR as that justification for get a fancier television, step up to a fancier plan, and they're in bed with the movie studios and the TV makers, so the TV makers might be a bit dirty because they're looking for more people who want to buy these televisions, and if they think, oh, well, there's no point in buying that HDR one because I've got to give even more money to Netflix before I can use it, that might put people off. So I think as an ecosystem, maybe they need to reconsider that. So, Alex, it's that time of year again. We're waiting on the Galaxy Note 9 this time. What does the rumour mill have to say?
Well, yes, as is usual this time of year, it's rumours season. And while I'm tempted to make a Fleetwood Mac joke, I won't. I'll forbear. But we sort of know a few things about the Note 9. We know that it's going to be released it's going to be launched in just over a month, I should say, in New York. We seem to know that the S Pen is going to be either yellow or gold, depending on how you interpret its teaser video. And then there's a few other details that have kind of come out around what the S Pen will do and around what the battery will do. And Tegan, I know you've been following this fairly closely. Battery is obviously a bit of a bad word when it comes to the Note series with Samsung, but what's the latest?
Yeah, so it looks like it might, if rumours are to be believed, have a bit of a bump up to 4,000. Now, that is, exciting news, obviously, but the downside on the rumour mill is that they're saying that it's not going to have any kind of fast charge. So, bigger battery life, but, you won't be able to charge it as fast as some of the other competitors in the market.
And that's interesting. 4,000 seems to be the limit that anyone throws into a battery. There are a few other 4,000 milliamp battery phones out there, but losing fast charging is going to be painful on a phone that big. I guess if it's true, Samsung is playing it very, very safe so that we don't actually have Samsung Note 9 barbecues.
Absolutely. I think that they're playing it really conservatively based on what happened with the 7, which I can understand that. There's also a really good argument to be made, and this is coming from someone who loves fast charging. I love it so much, but it can deteriorate the battery quite significantly over time. So considering that Samsung has also promised that, their batteries, they will only drop to about 95%, after 2 years of usage, I can see why they might not want to go down the fast charge route.
Are they making promises they can't keep? They're 95, as an iPhone user who sometimes wants to throw the damn thing against the wall, 95% after 2 years sounds a bit ambitious to me.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to see that play out in practice, and if it does, fantastic, but, that's what they've said.
It's certainly pretty bold. Sony's got, and they've talked for a while about some of the patented technology they've got in their phones, which specifically addresses battery life over time. Not endurance, but, numerous years. And off the top of my head, I think they talk something like 80% after 2 years. Yeah. And so 95's a big, bold, if accurate, move.
Yeah, very, very bold. I think the other thing that, again, if it's true, that might be an argument for the lack of fast charging is that with the enlarged battery, slower charge times, but, slower deterioration as well. So, that could be an argument, again, for someone who, I get very anxious when my battery drops below 50%. I would still prefer the fast charging, but it could be an argument.
Yeah, the other feature, of course, for the Note series, the thing that makes the Note be on that big screen, is the S Pen. And so far what seems to have emerged is that for some reason, Samsung wants to put Bluetooth in its S Pen stylus. What's that all about?
Gosh, yeah. So this one that has been rumoured for a little while, but was mentioned again by a notorious leaker, which I say in inverted commas, Ice Universe, from their account on Twitter. So they've been right about a lot of things before, especially when it came to the Note 8s. So yeah, they're saying that it could, also be a Bluetooth device and also have maybe be a Bluetooth speaker as well.
What would be the advantage of putting Bluetooth? Is it already an active stylus? What would be the advantage of putting Bluetooth in it?
You're asking the wrong person, and only because I don't care about the S Pen. I am someone.
Okay.
I've only just recently even.
I'm glad we cleared that up.
Look, I get why some people love it. I understand. So that's what we were talking about before. As a reviewer, I can sit there saying, I hate this, but I see why some people love it. I'm someone who's only just been converted to even caring about touchscreens on a laptop. So I'm not one to really use styluses at all. So I sit here going, why? Why?
Well, Alex, is the stylus on the Notes to date, have they been passive, so just like a piece of plastic, or have they been active with some kind of battery in them?
So they operate... from memory, I'm trying to think about the underlying technology on them. They're not precisely passive in that Samsung builds software into them to perform a range of other features, and they're fairly unique. If you look at the smartphone space, almost any idea that anybody has, someone will come along and copy. So you have an animated emoji, and suddenly everyone's got animated emojis. Yeah. You go dual cameras, almost everyone, Sony excluded, maybe Google, goes dual cameras. But Samsung's really the only ones that have stuck with the idea of having a stylus in a phone year after year after year. We've seen a few manufacturers have a little go at it, but the last thing I can think of in the Australian market that wasn't a Samsung phone with a stylus in it was that weird, very budget, mid-range LG digital radio smartphone.
Oh yeah,
and that was just a
I'd forgotten about that.
I think almost everyone did. Yeah. LG probably did too, but. The S Pen is kind of the Notes calling card, because when the first Notes came out, of course, they were huge by comparison to everything. Now there are plenty of big screen phones, and lots of people like the Note. I think, Tegan, you probably fall into this category. Lots of people like the Note just because, hey, it's a big, powerful phone. It's a big screen device, so you can watch things that are larger or look at larger web pages or what have you on it, and never pop the stylus out at all.
And it doubles for self-defense. You can club a man to death with that phone.
Yeah, look, I can't comment on whether that has or hasn't happened before.
Well, I mean, I guess the other interesting thing for the Note 9, we know when it's coming, but there's also, I mean, the rumour mills are already churning on when we'll see the next Galaxy phones, Galaxy X or Galaxy 10 foldable phone that they're talking about, and the S10, and they're both apparently rumoured for very early next year. That doesn't give Samsung a lot of time to sell Note 9, so I'm kind of left wondering, what else is it that they can sell us on the Note 9 that isn't already on, for example, the S9 Plus?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I'm really expecting to see the next S probably at World Mobile Congress next year. So yeah, it does leave me wondering, but it's interesting because the rumors that have been surrounding, the S10 or whatever it happens to be called are awfully early. And one of the ones that I actually reported on ended up just being a Photoshop job. So I think at this point, like with anything, it's, take it with a grain of salt.
True. And actually, speaking of grains of salt, the other big miller for the rumor roundup. That was a terrible segue, but, we do what we can on the fly.
Hardest working man in podcasting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That was the
absolutely.
most strained, awkward segue ever. Working hard on that one.
Yeah, totally. Look, you're getting your money's worth out of me today. Is Apple. And they're the flip side to Samsung, if you will, because whilst we don't have firmer dates as we do with the Note 9, there are a lot of rumours around where Apple's going with its 2018 iPhones, with its iPhone 10 successors. And I mean, just recently, Tegan, we've seen benchmarks around how the new iPhones might perform.
Yeah, so this is one that actually has just come about in the last couple of days. So Geekbench, which I'm sure all of us here use on a regular basis, or at least know of, an interesting addition went up on it called iPhone 11,2. And it has some pretty impressive benchmarks. So it comes in with a single core score of 4,673. And for multi, it's 10,912. So people are thinking that this might be the next big daddy flagship successor to the iPhone X.
Yeah, it's a tricky one with benchmarks because they're often kind of used by the fan groups to kind of wave, this is better, this is better. And Apple has actually, for this particular benchmark, Apple has dominated over the last year. There's a huge gulf between your top-level Snapdragon 845 phones and the iPhone family. But it's not, if you'll pardon me, apples to apples comparison because you're not talking the same operating environment. iOS is not Android and vice versa.
100%. And I mean, the thing is, too, is again, this could have been faked. It's happened before. It could be absolutely nothing. And even if it is legitimate, you know, like you say, Geekbench or any sort of benchmarking is never particularly definitive, especially for something that is a rumored phone that may or may not exist.
For sure. I think presuming credibility, it potentially gives you a good benchmark against existing iPhone models. If you're sitting on an iPhone 8 or even on an iPhone 7, because that 2-year replacement cycle's generally smart work for replacing your phone if you can afford to do so, and you see those kind of benchmark figures, you can say, right, it is roughly this much better than what I'm currently running. It's not the whole story, obviously, but it can give you some useful comparison.
Absolutely, especially, again, if this is to be believed, the iPhone X came in at $4,055 for single and for multi $10,375. So, this one would certainly be better, but, you would hope so from the next generation.
Yeah, well, Apple's certainly going to hype it that way. And from what we've seen, again, from rumours, Apple famously does not comment on rumours or speculation. They may be looking to do what they did last year, launch 3 iPhones effectively at once. 2 successors to the iPhone 10, so presumably an 11 and 11 Plus, but nobody seems to agree on the naming. But also a much cheaper model, which will sort of be the iPhone SE2 that everyone's been waiting on.
Yeah, and again, I just find it so funny with the naming. Like, I've been reading other reports, besides the ones that I write myself, and, you're seeing iPhone X Plus, iPhone 11 and 11 Plus, iPhone 9. It's so funny.
It's Apple's branding problem to solve, really, and a branding problem of their own making in a way. I find that the cheaper part of it interesting, though, in that it sat on the iPhone SE for such a long time saying, oh, look, if you just want into iOS, this is how you do it, but we can't be bothered updating it. And people still do seem to buy them in certain numbers, but I guess what it might do, if it does go down this path, is kind of sweep out the old and in with the new in a bigger way than it's done before. Because typically the usual model has been, right, here's the new, 2018 phones. Right, we'll have a single storage capacity of last year's phones that you can buy if you want a cheaper option. If it goes down this route of, plus 11, 11 Plus and the cheaper one, maybe it'll get rid of a lot of those earlier phones in one go.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. And I'm actually interested to hear what Adam has to say about this, especially after saying you wanted to throw your iPhone against the wall. Like, what do you want from the next generation?
Well, I'm still on a very old iPhone, and I now understand why they toned down the battery. Because I saw that notification and said, how dare you throttle my power, and turned it off, and the phone was not happy. So I kind of understand why they're doing it. I don't know. Like, I'm not too proud to admit that I'm still rocking an iPhone 6. So I think the big thing is battery life. There's that people want to see. It's ridiculous when you hear people talk about, multi-day batteries on Android, and I just know that that's still not an option over here. Smarter things with things like Bluetooth and stuff. I don't know what Android's like, but Bluetooth just kills the battery on iPhone if you're leaving Bluetooth on all the time talking things. So a bit smarter power management like that.
As long as they don't get rid of the headphone jack, you'll be fine.
Well,
yeah. All right. That is part of the reason. To be honest, that is a little part of the reason why I've thought I'll save a few bucks, because I'm not looking forward to having a phone without a headphone jack. It is a real pain.
That is my top priority in a phone. As a technology journalist, if there is not a headphone jack, I am so unhappy.
Because it's just so convenient. It just lets you plug into anything. You can buy any kind of audio equipment, knowing as long as it's got a line in. But once you've got to carry around adapters and all that rubbish, one thing I was just wondering, but I did check, is whether the original iPhone SE is 64-bit. But it is, because we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago about how iOS updates tend to only cover 64-bit devices now. But that the first SE is a 64-bit, which means it should still be getting updates, I would assume, for things like iOS 12. If it's getting to the point where it stops getting updates, there's definitely a point where you'd think they'd want to bring out another one.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, on Geekbench, again, if it's to be believed, it does say iOS 12 on there, so that was interesting.
Yeah, well, what we already know for iOS 12 is it goes back to, again, off the top of my head, I think it's the 5S.
Yeah.
It's quite far. It's basically that first 64-bit phone. They've said, hey, yeah, we will make this available, which is, again, it's a longer stretch back than many would have predicted. And that emerged when they announced iOS 12 at WWDC. But as always, you'll get better iOS performance and probably more features if you buy the new phone.
Of course. And what I really want to see is someone who used to be an Apple fangirl and then just jumped off that boat like real fast in the last couple of years. I just want to see a really good camera on those things. I mean, I'm at the point where I carry a Huawei P20 with me everywhere. Damn the security just for that camera. I'm just like, you know what? Maybe I won't get 5G, but damn if that camera isn't nice. So that's what I would really like to see Apple focus on in the next generation of phones.
They're always in that interesting position with cameras because usually when they come out with their new phone, it tends to have either the best or very close to the best camera that you can get, but there's so many Android competitors out there. And like you say, I mean, the P20 Pro has an exceptional camera on there. I tend to day-to-day use an S9 Plus because the one thing I don't like about the P20 Pro is it can't expand the memory, and again, headphone jack. But the cameras on those are better than in my experience, than on the iPhone 10. But it's marginal as well. It depends on how heavy you're pushing them. For a lot of people, frankly, the cameras on mid-range phones are probably good enough by now. So, Adam, Facebook is back in the headlines, and not for good reasons if you're worried about security and especially your personal security.
When is Facebook in the headlines for good reasons? Like, seriously. Yeah, they've had some major bugs that might seem like a little thing, but when you think about the consequences, can be pretty significant. One bug that they've had recently meant that up to 800,000 users were affected by an incident that means people they thought they had blocked were suddenly unblocked and could see some of their posts. Now, you can imagine when you block someone, it's for a pretty good reason. So to think that, people you've been blocked have been able to see what you're posting is not good. They also had a technical error at the end of May, which meant that posts were set to public when they were supposed to be private, and that potentially affected up to 14 million users. So these are two pretty big deals. Tegan, how would you feel if you found out that someone you'd blocked for a good reason might have been seeing your post, and those posts you put up just for your close friends went to everybody?
I'd be horrified. I have people on my block list, for personal reasons and also some for safety reasons as well. So
exactly,
I would be absolutely horrified. I know that, a lot of the time it might seem a little bit superfluous, like, oh, you've blocked someone because of drama or whatever, but it is a really serious thing. I would honestly be scared.
Because these days, the blocking, you've got stalking, you've got bullying, you've got abusive relationships. There are a lot of very good reasons why people would block someone, and they're kind of trusting Facebook to do the right thing here. So I think they've really dropped the ball.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I'm glad that it got caught. I'm glad that it was, made aware to the public. But I really think that they need to take a look at themselves. Just like you said, when are they not in the news for security breaches over the last few months? Like, what is going on?
So, Alex, what will it take for people to walk away from Facebook? After the Cambridge Analytica thing, there was this delete Facebook thing that lasted for about 5 minutes, and then people went, maybe not. How bad does it have to get?
Well, I think in this instance, unfortunately, whilst it's absolutely a serious issue, I suspect the scale of the number of users, whilst it's a big number, is small in the scale of Facebook's user base. Yeah. For a lot of people, they will hit it's not my problem, it hasn't affected me, or they won't realise it. And here I've got to put out an admission, because there's something that I'm still checking into as we record this. I have someone who had blocked me for not serious reasons, not stalking reasons, nothing like that, but who had blocked me, and I've started seeing their posts again, and I have no idea why. And so I've reached out through a third party to say, hey, just so you're aware this is happening. I don't know if they've unblocked me because they've calmed down, or if it's Facebook. I've hit that particular bug, and it's put me into this very weird position where I don't want to reach out to the person and say, hey, look, by the way, I can see your stuff, because I don't want to freak them out.
Man, you and Ryan Reynolds need to sort this out once for all, right? You just need to bury the hatchet and move on. I know it was tough, but it's just time to let it go.
But for a lot of people, it won't be an issue. They'll just go, oh, well, that doesn't affect me. I've never blocked anyone, or I don't think this affects me. So they will carry on using Facebook in a useful kind of way as makes sense to them, because the other problem here is we've kind of been through it before, as you said before. Cambridge Analytica, Facebook constantly changing its privacy settings, so it's all been impossible to make sure you're not publishing everything to the world. And the audience doesn't seem to care. There's part of my brain that wonders if Mark Zuckerberg isn't just sitting in his money pit laughing evilly and going, how hard can I push these people before they push back?
That's a really good point. I think that, like you said, it's happening so often that, maybe complacency is just becoming the norm when it comes to Facebook. I certainly feel that with the Cambridge Analytica stuff, that the fact that, yeah, sure, you could make sure that your stuff isn't seen, but you have to dig into your privacy settings to do it. It relies on complacency as a business model. That's all that Facebook is based on. So it knows that people will, even if they do get outraged, they'll get over it. Or like Alex said, there's a bunch of people that won't notice or not really care if it doesn't affect them.
So the bell has rung, and it wraps up another episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks to Tegan for joining us for the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
As always, we'd love to get your feedback on the show, so feel free to comment via Twitter or the Vertical Hold Facebook page.
Thanks everyone for listening, and remember, if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button and leave us a review.
Vertical Hold, Behind the Tech News, is proudly brought to you by Belkin.
We're usually much more professional than this, aren't we, Alex?
It's totally fine.
You've caught us on a bad day.